This seed that is so small you can't see it unless it's right in front of you has the potential to teach you just about everything you need to know about gardening. Join me today as I explain why. Hi, I'm Gardener Scott, and this tiny little thing is a diamond eggplant seed. I got it from Seed Savers Exchange, and my plan this year is to take this seed, sow it indoors a couple months before my last frost date, then harden it off, transplant it into my garden, and begin caring for it. I'll put it in well-amended soil. I'll try to water correctly. I'll pay attention to the weather that it's being influenced by, and eventually I'll reach the point where I can harvest it and use it in my kitchen. I might even make some baba ganoush. The thing about this seed, as I've just described it, is an entire growing season. It's a season in the garden, and all of those steps, once you learn how to do them, will enable you to grow anything in your garden that matches your particular climate and weather and space. And it all begins with a single seed. While there are many factors to reach that point of harvest and then using the plants that you grow, many gardeners really think gardening is harder than it needs to be. They look at the entire season, everything I just described, and say, oh, that's too daunting. I don't know if I can do that. But I suggest you break it down into the individual steps, each of those factors. And when you learn how to do each of those steps one at a time, then suddenly the season is over and you can benefit from your great harvest. And you'll look back and realize, yes, there were some hard times, but overall it was enjoyable and it wasn't that hard at all. And it begins by selecting what you're going to grow. I highly recommend that you grow what you're going to eat. Now, if I didn't like baba ganoush, there would be no reason for me to grow this eggplant. But I like eggplant in a number of different dishes, so I've chosen to grow it. And I've chosen to grow this particular variety from Seed Savers Exchange because it's an heirloom variety. It's a plant that's been around for a while. It's open pollinated, which means I can save the seeds. And from this point forward, if I like this plant, this is the first time I'm growing it, but if I like it, then I can grow it year after year. Now, I just threw out some terms that might be a bit confusing if you're new to gardening. And I've got many other videos that will explain all of these different steps that I'll discuss in this video, and I'll be sure and put links to most of the important ones in the description below. Now, I like to try open pollinated and heirloom seeds at every opportunity. That's one reason why I like Seed Savers Exchange, because they specialize in those type of seeds. And that's why I went to them to buy something like diamond eggplant. When you grow from seed, the first place you should start is by reading the seed packet itself. It should give you a lot of information that you need to get started. So for example, looking at this diamond eggplant, it tells me not only what the fruit is like, it's 9 inches long and 3 inches in diameter, which is ideal, but it also tells me that it's got excellent texture and flavor. It's disease resistant and rarely bitter. But more importantly, it tells me that it will give me fruit in clusters of 4 to 6 on 2-foot tall plants. So as I plan where to put this in my garden, I can anticipate how big the plant is going to get and how many of the plants I can grow in my various beds. But to get it started, it tells me that I should start the eggplant indoors 6 to 9 weeks before the average last frost. For me, that's just about right now. That's why I'm going to be starting this. I should soak the seeds first to encourage germination and then sow them 1/4 inch deep. All seed packets should have this basic information. Knowing how deep to sow the seeds is important because some seeds actually require light for germination. So you don't stick them into the soil, you put them right on the surface of the soil. And then it tells me that using bottom heat will help sprouting. And then I should transplant when the soil has warmed in the location and gets 8 to 10 hours of direct sun. Well, right there, the seed packet has taught me a lot about what this plant is. It's a warm season plant, which means it can't be put in the garden till after the last frost date. It needs a lot of sun, and only then can I expect success. It should come as no surprise that very few seeds can be sown in the snow, especially in a vegetable garden like mine. But when I plant the seeds, part of the process is learning whether they are a cool season or a warm season plant. Because cool season plants might actually be able to handle some of the snow. They might not germinate under the snow, but once the plant starts growing, freezing conditions won't kill it. That's not true for the warm season plants. So the cool season plants like spinach and kale and Swiss chard will just shrug off all this snow. But the warm season plants like peppers and squash and melons, well, they can't handle any cold at all. And so a day like today, if it were to happen in the middle of my growing season, would kill all of those warm season plants. But the cool season plants would do just fine. That's part of the important factors when you choose your seeds and learn how to grow them. Because for many of us to grow those warm season plants, we have two options. We can buy them as a plant at a nursery or a garden center, or we can start them from seed. And those warm season plants like tomatoes and peppers and eggplants are ideally suited for us to grow. But now we enter a whole new arena of gardening, and that's starting seeds indoors. Do you grow in yogurt cups? Do you grow in a 72 cell tray? What kind of mix do you use? What kind of lights? All of these are important factors as well, and I've got videos that explain all of it. But the point is, you don't need to be overwhelmed because it's just one step at a time. If I choose to grow in a yogurt cup, well then I can either make or buy the seed starter mix and the potting soil mix to grow this particular eggplant. By growing indoors, I will need lights, but I don't need special expensive lights. I can use what I already have. I might even be able to grow on a windowsill. Just take it one step at a time, but learn about each of those steps so that when your plants are under lights, before you know it, you'll have little seedlings start to pop up. And this is one of the best things about gardening, is to take a seed and then see it grow. But not all seeds have to be started indoors. So you might be able to put off those lessons about growing seeds indoors for another year. Instead, start with some of those seeds that you can sow directly into the garden. Corn, cucumbers, lettuce, radishes. Those are all plants that do great when sown directly into your garden beds. But you also should be concerned about the garden beds based on what it is you want to grow. When you decide to grow from seed, you'll learn a lot about what kind of containers you'll grow in, be them wooden raised beds, metal raised beds, in-ground beds, or just open ground. These are all factors to consider as you look at your seed and learn how it grows. This eggplant will only grow a few feet high, so I could easily put it in one of my vegetable garden raised beds for its entire life. It's ideally suited for a space like this. I could also grow this eggplant in a 5-gallon bucket or one of those cloth grow bags. There are many different options, and that's another way to learn about gardening, is to understand how big the plant is going to get and put it in a spot where it can grow to that size. It really doesn't matter that much if it's a raised bed made of wood or metal, or if it's in the ground, or if it's in a grow bag. The idea is to look at your seed, look at your seed packet, learn about how the plant grows, and then match the plant to the best location in your garden. By starting from seed and then growing your plants, you can learn an awful lot about the weather in your particular garden, what this eggplant and all of the other plants require to survive. It really gets you the opportunity to focus on what's happening outside. Too often we go through life without doing anything more than complaining about the rain or wondering when the snow is going to stop. But when we look at it from a gardener's perspective, you see things differently. I see all this snow and realize it's going to melt, and my whole garden is going to get a free watering. During the rain, it's the same thing. When I have nothing but sun out, that affects my plants differently. It's going to get very windy today. The wind will affect your plants as well. By being a gardener and growing from seed, look around, pay attention, and make notes about what the weather is like in your garden. Weather is one of those things in the garden that we just really don't have much control over. But by recognizing what patterns we have, that's how we can start using weather to our advantage. The sun, the shade, whether we get a lot of rain or a little rain matters, because watering our plants is one of those things that scares a lot of new gardeners. We tend to overwater or underwater most of the time. But it's really as simple as just using good amended soil that has a lot of organic matter in it, and then trying to keep that soil evenly moist through the growing season. That often means just taking our finger and sticking it into the soil to see if it's dry after a period of no rain, or if it's soggy after a period of a lot of rain. That helps us identify some of those gardening tasks, like watering, that we might not need to do as often or might need to do more. Doing a regular schedule of watering often doesn't work. And that's part of this process of learning about gardening, is looking at the plant, understanding what its needs are, particularly the water, and then learning what's best for our specific garden. Not listening to advice from others that might live halfway across the world, but focusing on our plants where we planted them. And as your plants grow through the season, you'll be confronted with a number of other issues like mulching and fertilizing and dealing with pests that might attack your garden. Don't be overwhelmed by it before it even happens. You can anticipate that you'll probably have to be concerned about those issues. So learn about them ahead of time, before the plant even goes in the ground. And then once it's growing, you can deal with each of those factors as they happen. And then understanding how big the plant gets, now you start thinking about other things like pruning and trellising. Small plants like eggplant usually don't require any additional support because they stay relatively low to the ground. But vining plants, plants like tomatoes, for instance, indeterminate tomatoes will keep growing and growing and growing. So you need to learn about trellises, how to support some of those plants. And if they grow vertically, they'll save space in your garden. Trellising is one of those things that when you learn more about it, you can definitely use it to your advantage in the garden. Be it for small eggplants that don't require it at all, to the squashes and the melons and the tomatoes that can benefit from a tall trellis like this. And then if you're lucky, you'll reach the point where you can harvest. But I have to be honest, it doesn't always happen the way you anticipate. Last year, I didn't get much of a harvest at all due to an extremely devastating hailstorm and also an extremely early freeze. I still learned all of those pieces that got me to the point of harvest. I just wasn't able to harvest. But this year, I'm anticipating a lot more because I learned a lot from last year, and I'm putting all of those lessons into play this year, so that hopefully I'll have the eggplant and make that baba ganoush. Now you may wonder why I chose the diamond eggplant. Well, this is all part of the single seed challenge. The idea is to pick a plant and then choose one seed from that plant and follow the progress from when it's put into soil until when you harvest it. And this year I'm using the diamond eggplant. You can follow all of the steps necessary, but when you highlight a particular plant, it makes it much easier. So as I've been explaining in this video, these are lots of different ways to look at gardening, all these different things you need to learn. But it really is easier when you look at one seed and one plant than to try to approach all of your gardening all at once, trying to learn everything you need to know. Instead, slow down, relax a little bit, focus on one single plant, like I am with the diamond eggplant for this year's single seed challenge. And if I see something go wrong, I can identify it with this plant. Then I can use that information to benefit the rest of the garden. But I'm looking at it almost like looking through a microscope to identify what's working and what's not working, rather than standing back from a distance and trying to guess what's going wrong or right with the whole garden. I like the idea of focusing, and I like the idea of following a single seed. And you can expect more videos in the months ahead as I plant this eggplant and show you exactly what's needed to get to the point where I can harvest it. And then I might even show you how I make baba ganoush. There's a lot more to learn, and as I said, I'll put links to videos in the description below. But for now, I suggest watching one of these videos next. I'm Gardener Scott. Enjoy gardening.